Hey guys, welcome to the show. Today I have a very special guest, Jonathan Gass. He has an amazing story of redemption. He was transgender and then became a Christian. His story is is amazing and we're going to hear it now. So welcome, Jonathan.
Nice to meet you.
John. Okay, welcome, John. So, John, let's you have an amazing story. I read about I read about you in the Gospel Coalition. You wrote an article about your story. We'll put the link below to that. But let's start with your childhood. When did you
Yeah.
start to feel gender dysphoria? When did you start to feel like you were in the wrong body?
I would say around 6 years old, to be honest with you. It was as soon as I realized there was an actual difference between boys and girls that I started having those feelings. There was a certain innocent time where I just thought it was a preference for certain colors and different styles of clothing that for some reason other children were allowed to choose, but I wasn't. Um, so as soon as that faded, I was realizing that there were a lot of things that I really wanted, that seemed to be only accessible to girls. I just wanted to grow up and be a mom and all of that sort of stuff, and have all of the sort of pink pastel kinds of pretty things in my life that I
Hmm.
envied of other children. So I would say it developed into a more physiological desire as I grew older. Certainly, when I hit puberty, it hit a breaking point where I really struggled to uh, basically make it through the day without throwing up.
Wow.
Um, there was some serious depression going on because of just feeling like I um wasn't at peace with my own body. So
So when you were, well, let me go back to when you were a kid, I mean, when you look back on it now, were there any factors that you feel like contributed to that, the feeling of dysphoria, or do you just think it was just kind of the way you were wired?
I think it was mostly the way I was wired. To some extent, my mom had mentioned a few times that she would have liked to have had a girl, but um I don't think that really had a big role in what I went through. I think it was really coming from the inside out rather than the outside in, so to speak. Um, in terms of any kind of trauma or anything like that, I really can't put my finger on anything. It was just this gnawing feeling that I just didn't want to accept the gender roles that I had been put into. Um,
Hmm.
I had a different idea of who I was supposed to be, and just being a tough, um, military kind of like my father was in the military, so there was a certain sense of I'm going to have to grow up to be this, and I don't want to be. Um, so even though I was playing with, army men and everything like that as a child, I was secretly um, harboring some serious secrets.
Right. So in high school, what were your parents? I mean, were your parents aware in high school that you were going through this kind of these sort of dysphoria, these feelings?
Oh, it was a closely guarded secret my whole life. I had no idea that there were really transgender people until about 2001. Um, it didn't really dawn on me that there were actually possibilities for reshaping your body, that sort of thing. I'd heard of transvestites, people who dress in clothing associated with the opposite gender before, but I thought that's as far as it could go. And that didn't quite cut it for me.
And
So,
where did you grow up in a small, where did you grow up?
oh, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, uh,
Okay.
just by the riverbanks.
And so, continue, like, how did this dysphoria, how did, after, through high school, later on, how did it continue to manifest itself? Like, what did you think about it? What did you do about it?
Um, well, it really all started in middle school. Um, I was a member of the Boy Scouts of America back then, and there was a lot of bullying because I didn't sort of fit the stereotypical male roles. People wanted me to be a lot tougher, a lot more outdoorsy, and a lot more bombastic. The person who really took charge of the conversation and everything about being a leader and just taking charge really didn't fit well with me at that moment because I felt like I was betraying a piece of who I was. Um, Looking back, it really didn't make much sense. Personalities are what they are. It doesn't really hinge on what gender you are. Um, but because of the bullying, I started feeling like I was sick to my stomach all the time. I was missing so much school. Um, that was probably the worst time of my life when I was dealing with that. But
So middle school was the worst part.
yeah, probably around seventh, eighth grade. My grades slipped horribly. I had always been a straight A student, and now I was getting C's because I was just constantly thinking about my body is being destroyed because I'm going through puberty and my voice is changing, and this is not what I want at all. So, I
So
reacted kind of
when
horribly to that.
was it in high school when you discovered that there were such thing as transgender people?
Yes, around that time, I want to
And
say,
what did you think when you found that out? What did you feel like? How did that make you feel?
I felt a lot of hope back then. Um, Looking back on it now, I wouldn't have felt the same way as I did then. But there were documentaries that I saw of people who had undergone hormone therapy,
Hmm.
and I was just amazed at what difference it could make. Um, there were people who were born female who could grow beards. There were people who were born male who could grow female characteristics.
Hmm.
Um, and that became the ultimate goal for me. So that's pretty much why high school was less of a horrible experience than junior high, because I just had that sense of one day I might be able to do this.
Hmm.
Except I was so shy that I could never ever break that secret with anybody. Not my parents, um, not anybody, all the way through high school.
So
And
how old were you when you decided to actually take the plunge and do this?
oh, not until 33.
So what was going on between high school and 33 with you?
I was questioning my sexuality. I was questioning my place in the world. Um, so there was that documentary I saw in 2001 called Southern Comfort. I believe it was on HBO.
Yeah.
That gave me some insight into there are hormone treatments available, and then I found out about surgery. That became the goal, except by the time I got to college, there was a lot of sort of depression going on. I started out really strong in college, But eventually, when I switched to English major, my one professor started to notice me slipping pretty badly
Hmm.
and started talking to me about potentially unveiling a homosexual, like my gay identity. So I started thinking about, what my sexual identity was, and maybe that was the problem rather than just, I was born the wrong gender, that kind of thing. So there were a couple of things that created speed bumps for me along the way because I really wasn't sure who I was at that point because I'd always been running from who I really was to try to chase something that I only vaguely knew could be out there.
And were you attracted to the same sex at that time?
No, I never have been.
Okay.
Um, it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know. Um, I just wanted to try it just to see if there was anything that would make me feel better.
Hmm.
Because I was just so depressed all the time. I couldn't function very well. I wasn't reaching my potential as a student. I did end up graduating I ended up graduating magna cum laude. Like I was a successful student and everything, but it was really rough sledding along the way. I just wanted anything that I could find to make me feel better, and it just seemed I didn't I didn't know how to even begin to explore actually transitioning gender and what basically the area of Pennsylvania I lived in. I never imagined that I would ever be accepted for who I was.
Yeah. And so what was going on in your life from when you graduated college until you were 33?
I was working at a newspaper, just kind of at a job, copy editing, graphic design, where I could be huddled in an office, not really having to see anybody ever. The more I isolated, the better I felt.
Hmm.
Um, so that was basically the boring story of my life is a lot of isolation just to avoid heartache until
And were you, I mean, were you still experiencing bouts of depression during this time?
yes, oh, definitely. I'm actually diagnosed bipolar. I have bipolar disorder. So, I have bouts of mania, bouts of depression, and it's hard to really untangle what was caused by the dysphoria and what's just naturally brain imbalance. But yeah, definitely I was depressed almost all the time. I really didn't know how to make myself be happy, so I just huddled in my little closet and suffered in silence.
And so when did you finally, I mean, how did you get the courage or the wherewithal or whatever to decide to actually try this and try transitioning?
We finally had a story at the paper I worked for, in which a group of transgender identifying people gathered for a sort of retreat in a state park out in the woods, just to dress as they want to and live outwardly how they feel inside in a sort of non-judgmental space, I suppose. Um, they just wanted to have a place for their own, at least for one day. That's essentially the gist of what the story was, and I was like, I need to get in on this. This is my opportunity. I had actually been talking with one of my coworkers for a while. She identified as bisexual, and she was always very open about talking about these sorts of LGBT issues with me. And I just finally came out to her and I said, I'm going to go to this retreat. I really think that I'm going to change my name and it's going to be Andrea. And that's really where the ball got rolling.
Wow. Okay. So how long from that retreat until you actually started? I mean, what did you do? Hormone therapy, and what else? What did you do?
After the retreat, somebody mentioned gender therapist is basically the place to start. So I looked online for gender therapists in my area. I found a wonderful one. Even to this day, I'm appreciative of the sort of psychological assistance that she provided in that time. Um, she at least let me know what was out there, and at the time I was grateful for it. Um, we kind of talked about what the steps in the process are, what emotional response you can expect from hormones, what physiological response you can expect, how to find a community that will be supporting you, what to expect from surgery, um, the steps that you have to take to prepare for surgery, and what happens after surgery. It was all in one bundle for me to go through before I could even have access to hormones. You have to go through this whole process
Right.
before the medical community will give you access.
Yeah. I don't know if that process is as stringent as it was back then, but
I don't think it is
today I
anymore.
think you just, but yeah, in the past you had to actually go through therapy and, um, go through that process. And so after that process, I mean, what was it when you started hormones, et cetera? Like what did you feel like?
I felt like the real me was coming out for the very first time. I felt such a surge of euphoria, the opposite of dysphoria. I just felt like I was finally at that place that I had always wanted to be. Um, I was finally doing something about it after having hidden from it for so many years. Um, just because of the fear that I had from all of the bullying and um, everything that had happened to me, all of the efforts to um, sort of unveil a gay persona, that sort of thing. I was finally able to cast all of those sorts of indecisions and misdirections to the side and say, I am finally here. I am Andrea and I am proud. And that's really how I felt up until I decided to detransition. But the physical processes took quite a while to actually start to manifest themselves.
And did you go through with, like the full surgery and everything?
Oh yeah, yeah, I did.
And
Yeah.
so when did your parents find out and what was their reaction?
Well, shortly after I um, attended the retreat, I talked to my friend at the paper about my plans and how I was going to go about it, and I was still too terrified to talk to them directly. I was worried that my father was going to lose his mind. I figured my mom would be happy about it because she had always wanted a daughter. I'm an only child, so that didn't work out for her.
Hmm.
Um, but I ended up sending a letter to them instead of directly confronting them face to face because I was so afraid of the fallout. And I just explained, here's what I'm doing. The hormones are going to reposition the fat in my body so that I look different. I'm probably going to have re I guess gender affirming surgery is what they call it now. Um, and I expected that my father would absolutely blow up and that my relationship with my parents would be strained, to say the least, for quite some time. But I
Hmm.
found nothing but the most unequivocal support from them, which just blew me away. I was astonished that people could be that supportive um, of something that probably they didn't really even consider um, for somebody who had it so well hidden for so long.
Wow. And then at a certain point, if I'm not mistaken, you started to kind of go on a search for spirituality, kind of going to Eastern religions. So
Right.
talk about why did you start that process and what were you, what kind of religions were you involved in?
Well, Buddhism was the biggest one. Um, I had been exploring that as far back as my early teens, just because I was a really big believer in, well, I wouldn't necessarily say I was a believer in reincarnation, but I was someone who was very hopeful for reincarnation because I wanted that to sort of work its way into me reaching my dreams. Um, I sort of misunderstood the point of the religion, obviously,
Hmm.
because the whole idea is that you meditate in order to break free from the cycle of endless rebirth. Um, that's generally how I understand the religion nowadays. But for me, the process of failing to attain those goals was what really drew me to the religion. And that's, I sort of had that rudimentary and wrong outlook on it for a very long time until I really explored it in more depth when I got to law school. And there they told me all about the samsara and the cycle of death and rebirth and karma and everything that's really central to the religion that I had misunderstood.
And so did you leave Buddhism at a certain point and seek something else?
Yeah, I mean, I was never really formally involved in it. I just wanted to sort of be a mystic in a certain sense,
Hmm.
kind of like a new agey a la carte sort of way.
Right.
Um,
And so what did you look for next? What was your, I mean, what was
well,
your next?
basically the next came Hinduism, um, because it's a lot of the same ideas. It was just a little bit more. I could study a little bit more and sort of misunderstand more things and just have a little bit more, I have to find the right religion, and the more that I try, the more likely I am to hit upon the right one. All of them are, aimed toward helping me cope with my uh, gender dysphoria, and all of them I'm really misunderstanding. And I wouldn't necessarily call myself an adherent to any of those religions. I would just call myself a sort of new agey kind of poser,
Right.
um, just doing it for self-serving interests and not really understanding it very well. There were other ones that I tried. There was Jainism.
Hmm.
I had been a vegan at the time, and I fancied myself as being especially compassionate and caring about all life on Earth. And Jainism really prizes not disrupting life any more than is absolutely necessary. Don't step on any bugs. Um, don't eat meat for sure.
Right.
Um, so a lot of that ties into a lot of what I had been studying about the other religions. Um, but the common denominator for them all was that I wasn't really practicing in any formal sense or any correct sort of theology behind them.
Right. Okay. And you say in the article you talk about Christianity and you say that uh Christianity, the predominant faith in it was your most feared religion, and you
Yes.
said Christianity bears the brunt of modern criticism. It was oppressive to me, too limiting and too judgmental. So talk about what happened when your friend gave you the notebook version of the Gospel of Matthew? Why did your friend even do that? And how did you receive that?
Um, well, I had actually studied Christianity when I was a child. I tried to read the Bible on my own. I got through Genesis, I got through Matthew. I read bits and pieces here and there. I was entirely too young to understand it on my own. And I really never went to church or anything, so I didn't have that uh, solid basis as a child. But I did give it a fair shake in my litany of religions that I tried, probably from age 12 to now. Um, but I had been uh, sort of looking into closer to the West sort of religions. I took classes on Judaism and Islam, and I was really exploring those in a lot of depth. And my friend Jordan just, since you're exploring all of these things, why don't you give Christianity a try? And I absolutely adored her for giving me a copy of the Gospel of Matthew. It sort of reignited that spark that I had from back when I was first studying. I always had the sense that Jesus was the correct answer
Hmm.
throughout my life. It's just, I was always afraid, um, feeling that I was unworthy of Jesus's grace. I felt I was unworthy of going to church. I felt that I was never going to be accepted because I was committing too many sins.
Hmm.
I had a very warped view of Christianity. So it helped for me to have so much support when I was still reeling from my depression. Even though I had transitioned, things really didn't suddenly flip a switch into being okay for me. I was still dealing with a lot of depression.
Hmm.
Um, and it helped that somebody was still willing to give me a shot, even though it seemed like I was a hopeless case.
And
So,
Was Jordan a Christian?
um, yes, Jordan is a Christian.
Okay.
She goes to Trinity Bible Church in Phoenix with me. And she was the one who gave me the Gospel of Matthew. She gave me Gentle and Lowly. And
Gentle and Lowly is by Dane
Jane
Ortland, right?
Ortland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Um,
so what and then you started attending her church, right?
yes.
And what was
Yeah, she
that like?
was,
Wait, were you attending her church as a woman?
yes, that's how it started. She called herself a baby Christian when it first started to. That was her term for it. She had only been attending for a couple of months. Um, she had, in law school, we call it clerking. She worked for one of the judges on the Court of Appeals out here in Arizona, um, who attended Trinity Bible Church. And I, I'm not certain about it, but I'm guessing that there was some encouragement to Jordan to go to church where that judge attended. Um, and
And so what was it like when you first started going to this church?
yeah, when I first went, I was dressed as a woman. I had makeup on, I had my dress on. Um, I have all my female characteristics still to this day, and I felt terrified. I felt like everybody was going to be judging me. I felt like I was walking into a situation where I don't deserve to be here. Um, I don't fit the mold of what I think a Christian is or should be. And I feel like I have so much work to do before I deserve to be here. Like, I
Hmm.
fundamentally misunderstood the religion.
Yes. And so did people in the church, did they know you were trans or did they not see that or understand that?
I think most people could understand that. My voice has never changed, so
Okay.
that tended to be a solid giveaway. A lot of people would ridicule me on the streets when they heard me speak up,
Mm.
because the voice is incongruous with the dress. Um, but I think a lot of people had me clocked, so to speak. They could tell that I wasn't born female based on my
Hmm.
appearance. But there was such an outpouring of kindness that I couldn't believe right from the very beginning. Um, the pastor
Pastor
immediately,
Malachi, is his name. So
Pastor
talk
Malachi,
about, yeah, he kind of took you under his wing, right?
yes, yes. We had a lunch. Uh, I would say after the second week I attended. The first time it was just kind of an introduction, you know, here you can feel it out there's no pressure yet. And even after the second week, when we had the lunch, it was a zero pressure kind of situation. It was just a session about here we are as resources for everything that you might want to know about Jesus Christ and the Bible, our church, what we can do to help you. Um, and I was just very moved by how much people cared to take time out of their day. Trinity has about 300 members, so for a pastor to take that much extra time just for one person who isn't even a member yet, it felt very special to me. So I always appreciated that first experience with him. Um,
Hmm.
from that point, he started discipling me, and the first time I went into his office, I was in tears, just sobbing, um, because basically I had made the decision then that this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted all along. Um, I was going to let go of a part of my identity, but I wanted to make sure that I was not too far gone. Um, so
What do you
even
mean
though
not too far gone?
too far gone to receive grace, to be forgiven,
Hmm.
um, I just really didn't understand um, this whole idea of if you wait to be perfect to come to Jesus, you're never going to get there. Um, it's kind of an idea we've been
So obviously
exploring.
Pastor Malachi disabused you of the idea that you were too far gone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I was sobbing uncontrollably, thinking that I was because of all of the things that I had done. Basically, I rejected Jesus for so many years. I was a militant atheist. I actually converted somebody from Christianity to atheism back in my um, wild youthful days, because I was just so angry about the situation that I had been put in. And
Hmm.
I felt that if there was somebody to blame for it, I would figure out a way to blame someone for it. And the convenient religion was the one that everybody seems to want to criticize for being too holier than thou and too much full of Bible thumpers who are judging and looking down on everyone. Um, I was just filled with anger for so long about this religion that I totally misunderstood. And he helped me see that not only was there no reason to be angry, there was a lot of reason to be joyful that I went through all of that struggle. Um, because now I'm going to appreciate it all, all the more.
Yeah. And so what was the process of you started reading John Bunyan, which I love.
Yes.
Did you read Pilgrim's
I
Progress?
read Pilgrim's
Oh, yeah,
Progress.
it's amazing.
I read Grace Abounding to the Chief of Sinners. That was my first introduction, just getting a little bit of background on him. And then I read Pilgrim's Progress and
Wow. And so
Christian and
was that
Faithful. And
and you read some systematic theology?
yes, I'm still currently reading systematic theology textbooks by Stephen Wellum and Wayne Grudem.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um, so they're basically getting me caught up to speed on all of the doctrinal stuff that I have curiosities about. You know, the gospel is simple enough that a child can understand, but deep enough that you can study it for your whole life. And
I know. Yeah. You can never plumb the depths.
yes,
And so when did you stop wearing dresses to church, or how did that stop?
um, it took a couple of weeks um, because I was just in a financial situation where I wasn't ready to throw out my whole wardrobe and pick up a whole new one.
Hmm.
Um, but the more I thought about it, the more I just said, like, I have to stop pretending to be somebody I'm not, because I found what I need. Um, all of the transition stuff really didn't end up working the way it initially felt. Um, I initially had that surge of euphoria, but as it became so mundane, uh, as time went on, and all I was experiencing was mean comments, people um, criticizing me for being not feminine enough or trying too hard to be feminine, kind of getting it from both sides. There's nothing that I can do that's right. I sort of soured on that whole idea too, and I was once again left adrift. But Christianity came to save me when I was at my lowest moments. I had actually been in and out of the mental hospital a few times before I finally did come to Jesus, and that was the biggest surge of support of all that I could ever imagine. And that's what finally made me happy in this life. Um, so I would say a good 3 weeks, but I was so proud to walk into church and be John for the first time. And everybody came up to me and they were so supportive. They were like, we loved you no matter who you were, but we're so happy to see you being content with who you are now.
Wow. And when was that?
That was last year.
Oh,
Um,
last year.
yeah, last year, probably May, June, midway through the year. So it's only been about a year and a half that I've been detransitioning.
Yeah, wow. And so obviously I have to ask this question. What did your parents think when you told them that you were a Christian and you were detransitioning?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. It's a tricky one. My father actually had a little bit of difficulty accepting his own um, sort of path in terms of coming to Jesus himself. His father had been a Baptist preacher, and I just don't get the sense that he really wanted to be involved in churchy stuff when I was a kid, which is why I just never really had much of a background, other than going to a couple of Sunday school classes with one of my other friends. Um, there was nothing that my family did. Um, so it was greeted with a little bit of shock, but a lot of support nonetheless. Like they've always cared about me primarily, and anything that I do to sort of better myself is what they're supportive of. And it took a little bit of convincing them that I was ready to let go of everything that supposedly had made me so happy. Um, but ultimately they accepted, you can change your mind. People make mistakes, and even though it made you happy for a little while, when it stops working for you, you can let it go. It's not something we're going to hold you. You're not going to hold it against me
And are your
for
parents
changing my mind.
Christians now, or what?
We're working on that.
Okay. It's in process. Okay.
My father has been attending a Presbyterian church. There are only about 14 members at the moment, so it's a little bit on the precarious side, but he's hoping that the church sort of regains its footing and gets its own pastor again. Um,
Hmm.
but I do have the sense that he's, if not a convert yet, that he's on the path.
Yeah, good. And so you talk about in the article, you talk about now you want in your life you want to be an activist in support of detransitioners. How is that playing out?
Well, the article has had a big response.
Hmm.
Um, I was surprised to get interview requests about it. Um, I've heard from so many people in places that I never would have imagined that the article had opened their eyes up to the path of a detransitioner and how that can tie into Christianity. I've had people who are identifying as transgender or considering becoming transgender in their families. And it feels so good to be able to point them to a story that can help them at least cope with the reality of what's going on, or hopefully to be used as a guide, as a cautionary tale
Hmm.
uh, of, you know, the sense that you might think that you're on the right track because this is what you want right now. But there are lifelong, unalterable, like, you can't go back on some of the things that you do, depending on the direction you take for your transition. So you really want to make sure that you think it through ahead of time. And this idea that somebody who was so very committed as me could eventually discard it, I think might be instructive for people.
Yeah, I mean, have you read Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage?
I have heard of it. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are, it's kind of like, it's like a lifelong sort of, once you transition, you sort of are dealing with lifelong stuff,
Oh, yeah.
medical stuff. Um, so now, uh, have your, is everyone in your church at Trinity, what is it, Trinity Bible Church?
Trinity Bible Church in Phoenix.
Is everyone kind of, surrounding you and supportive of you and, you know, helping
Yeah,
you through this?
yeah, absolutely. Just a note on the medical side of things, I'm definitely going to have to deal with it for the rest of my life. It's a regret that I have made my life significantly more difficult, but it's just one of those things that I want to put out there for people is that it's way easier to detransition than it is to transition.
Hmm.
So if somebody's thinking about it and worried that there's going to be a lot of pushback on the way down from their parents or their peer groups or anything, like I had none of that. And Trinity really underscored that there really isn't any social pressure that I experienced to maintain my transgender status. They have all surrounded me and really taken me under their wing and given me all of the support that I need to um, deal with all of the emotional baggage that comes with making this kind of decision. I actually have a Monday morning uh, fellowship group. We meet in the church's annex, and there are five of us guys who just we're supposed to be talking about church history, but we end up talking about each other far more. And they've been my friend group. They've been my heroes. I just appreciate them so much for giving me sort of the humor, the, you know, they're able to keep me from slipping into any kind of depression by propping me up with jokes and just support whatever I need emotionally at the time. They're there for. And I'm thrilled to know that one of the members of that fellowship group actually has a child who is considering transitioning,
Hmm.
and my experiences have helped sort of guide that process, his way of coping with that process as it goes along.
Good, good. Well, John, I'm thrilled that you are a Christian now and that you have, eternal life, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
And so all that,
Nice gift.
all the medical stuff, that's all going to go away when you go to glory. And
Yeah.
so, um, thank you so much for telling your story and for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, sure. I appreciate you taking the time for me.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.